So just a little bit of myself. I've actually been a consultant for the past decade now, and just been awarded with the Microsoft Certified Trainer, and do a lot of trainings, plus 200 courses within Power BI introduction, visualization, DAX, but also now Tabular Editor 3, and have all those fancy certifications there as well. But actually, I started with the business side with a lot of PowerPoints, with a lot of Excel, with a lot of manual processes. But what I would say, really solving a lot of business needs and problems, but in a too manual way, I would say. So I'm in that sweet spot, I would say, where I have 200 plus colleagues doing a lot of data scientist and data engineer work, where I'm in the middle, where I'm passionate about guiding self-service Power BI developers to not just work on manual processes, but actually understand creating a robust self-service solution that requires that you know a bit more about type 2 or slowly changing dimension of snapshots or query folding and performance and something like that. So I share a lot on LinkedIn, so check that out there as well. And yeah, I'm from Denmark as well, so I love sports and running marathons, half marathons, I would say. Cool. So this is my documentation, right? So blue screen of death, someone also said. But I would say there could be a hidden group of people among us. Some have never seen them, some have only heard about it. Some think it's a myth. It's the documenters. So people who love to document. So there are always some needs here that who actually loves documentation? I would say very few people actually do. But who actually writes documentation? Who updates the documentation? Who reads the documentation? And who can find the documentation? So we really have some issues here. Also just, who can understand the documentation? So maybe we are seeing a lot of updated documentation, but are we updating the documentation to the wrong audience group? So a lot of things here. So those are the needs. So also, why should we actually have documentation? Most likely you already have some examples yourself. I'll just have one example here on why. And then I'll go into a lot of practical live demos, fingers crossed, and everything will run. And maybe you will also have this question, or many colleagues ask me now, do you have a script for that? So I have a few scripts. Some is for Tabular Editor, some can be used with DAX queries or with Temple, and I will also try to make it very transparent when you need a Fabric capacity or when you need a Tabular Editor license as well. And I will share everything with you. So the slides, resources, I have already uploaded everything I have on my GitHub. So feel free to test that out yourself. And this is also recorded. So some things maybe we'll deep dive into. Some we will fast forward a bit, but then you can watch the recording afterwards. Cool. So just an example of a project. You would start having requirements gathering, then you're approving with the client, how much should it cost, or the time, or the quality, and then you're developing, then maybe you're validating and testing, and maybe if you're lucky, you're also able to train the end users, for example, and then at the end, when there's time, or if there's budget, or something like that, we will write some documentation. So I have seen this so many times that we will push the documentation to the very end, and there will always be some constraints with time or money or other resources. So what if we could try to document as we develop is more like the thinking I would like to have. So also, once we have already developed a solution and then updates a measure or something like that, we have some processes that actually helps us update the documentation immediately. So that's the thinking or the vision, I would say. So I have an example here. So what documentation? Well, you could say for transparency, compliance, scalability, collaboration, ease of debugging, reproducibility, especially being a consultant for the past 10 years, actually trying to hand over to a client and increasing that adoption of the solution when they should maintain that Power BI solution. Or maybe also during summer holidays, are they actually able to support the data solutions we've built? And then it would be easier if we are doing it in the same consistent way of how we create our semantic models, how we document, and something like that. And I have not myself did this, but a previous client asked for some help because there was a business critical report and that person had left the company. And when opening up the Power BI desktop, we could just see that that person had created 175 bookmarks without any documentation. So that took a while for them to recreate everything. So there are numerous more examples you could have, and most likely you have something yourself, but why do we need this? And it's also for especially handing over to clients or customers or colleagues. Is there a magic wand? Please write my documentation, ChatGPT 5.0 or something like that. Well, more and more with all these Temple and now PBIR and everything that will be more text-based and not just one big binary file, we will have more and more help from AI or Copilot or anything that can help guide us. But we still need a system, I would say, and something that we can guide. So a great book that I recommend is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he says that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So we all have goals and ambitions that our data solutions have good documentation. But basically, many data solutions have that, but with my experience, I have seen numerous projects not being that documented. So I would say, well, point to the system on how you would document all the processes to actually see how you're going to achieve that goal. So I have tried to put it into some boxes within Power Query, Semantic Model, Power BI Desktop, and App. You could say from model to app. And the purpose is that we are trying to be clear, concise, complete, consistent, correct, and consumable with this one. Will there be some updates or anything that I have missed? Definitely, yes, but it's a start. And I hope you're going to be inspired with a few of these tips and tricks. I will not go through everything. I don't have enough time for that. I know. But I have also highlighted whether these is actually automated or there are some kind of scripts, or you need to do this manual. And then I also have with the border that whether it requires a fabric SKU. And what we're going to see some examples of is, for example, with Power Query, there's query folders, applied steps, how we rename it. We can actually define some table properties. We can see these are manual where we need to do this. Then you could have some scripts or automation for generic tables like last refresh or measure tables or table.profile or formatting your Power Query. And especially within semantic model, we can see a lot is able to be automated, where we're also going to utilize Tabular Editor is especially with the info.view DAX functions that we're going to utilize, but also how we can actually have display folders, not just for measures, but also for columns. And also we're going to deep dive into how we can have folders for our tables, not just in Tabular Editor, but also something I have tried to include into Power BI Desktop as well. And then there are also a very nerdy data storyteller documentation where we have this report theme in JSON. I think the validation schema validation file is up to 80,000 lines of code in Visual Studio. So that many properties we can actually set in the report theme. I'm just going to take one of my report themes and actually try to connect to that JSON in Power Query and open that up and build a report on top of that so we can actually see what has been defined in that JSON theme, what you would normally maybe use external tools to do that. And then at the end, we're also going to look on how we can actually integrate or embed some videos or PDFs in an app, in an org app in Fabric, and especially also how we can actually have documentation that is updated in notebooks, and also that we can have a lot put into the lakehouse. All right, so let's get started.
That's very impressive. I love the way you've set that out with the automated and the manual and the ... It makes it really clear, David.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, interrupting, I know, but
no,
I really,
definitely
really like that.
Yeah, I like to put things in boxes, but I know that there's not just 24 boxes of documentation and that's complete, but again, it's a start.
That's brilliant.
And you can see I've tried to order this as well in my GitHub. I have pushed it a bit. I would like to publish a LinkedIn article or newsletter as well, but it's just too much work for now, I would say. But everything is here on my GitHub, so just feel free to take that and put it into your own solutions, and please provide feedback if you find anything. Yeah. All right. But let's see if we can learn something together here. And we'll start very slow. But here's an example, opening up Power Query. Just having a lot of tables or queries there, and also with the prefixes, whether you're going to have a dim view or dim or fact or D or an F. I would like to have my semantic model represent my business. And I would say this is often more technical terms, even though that my users somewhat should know about star schema and dimensions and fact tables, but maybe in other words. So having that is just a nightmare. And I supported a client a couple of years ago. Please, David, could you help us with some performance issues, blah, blah, blah. And then opening up the semantic model, they had 20 fact tables, 100 dimension tables, and it looked like this. So it took a while to actually try to, what's connected? Come on. So I love folders. It puts something into the boxes, right? And it's not rocket science. So for example, facts or dimensions or metadata or functions and parameters. You could also do it by the extract, staging, transform, load, or whatever. But this is way better than to the left, I would say. But the great thing is when you do it one place, it will actually propagate further down to other views or services there as well. So this was created in Power BI Desktop with Power Query in there, but opening up Data Flows Gen 2, for example, we can actually see that we have these small display folders at the table here in the more visual diagram view here, you could say. And again, applied steps and properties if you are using Power Query. I know some will never do this, but if you see these solutions with applied steps and properties, sometimes you just do it as you like, and then you will have add a conditional column, add a conditional column 1, add a conditional column 14 is a solution I've seen. So that's quite annoying to actually try to look on the M code what is actually happening. And also having change type 1, change type 2 in different locations. So it'd be much better to try to actually rename some of these things, try to filter as early as possible in terms of performance, but also trying to have your change type step into one step instead. So several things there. And if you don't like opening up the advanced editor with the M script and don't like that hashtag double quotation mark, if you avoid having a space in your applied steps name, you don't need that hashtag. So especially renaming steps for adding conditional column, merging queries, appending queries is definitely something to strive for. And I think his name is John Kursky from the US have created like a best practice analyze in Tabular Editor with some Power Query rules and regex that checks, for example, these rules. And then it can then check, are you violating your documentation rules based on, for example, renaming add a conditional column. I have a link for that in the last slides. Then you can also add table properties. So in the Power Query as well, right-clicking the table and clicking the properties, we can then actually, for example, mention where is this table coming from? Is it combined with different ERP systems, or is it coming from Excel budget table or whatever? And we will then see this in Power Query as well when hovering over that table. But great news is, well, often make a tooltip when you are creating a semantic model, pushing that out to Power BI report developers, connecting with a live connection. They're not able to see the DAX measure description there, or the DAX measures. Then you maybe have a script or copy paste the DAX expression into the description, so they have like a small tooltip. Why are we not doing that for the tables as well? Because why don't tell the information on where is this table coming from in a system-wise? So we can actually have this propagated. So in Power BI Desktop, loading the tables in, hovering over the table, we can see that description that we have set, for example, here in Query Properties in Power Query. And this is also propagated further to the data flows Gen 2 experience in Fabric. And even better, so in OneLake Catalog, I don't know how many are using that, but I could imagine that more and more will going to utilize that. Opening that semantic models up, you will have like opportunity to write some descriptions on your model. But look at this. We have the tables and we have the description there, as I said in the Power Query. So it's actually propagated further. So it's not just in the Power Query, it can be outside when you're developing reports, and also when you are trying to discover whether you would like to try to work or explore with this semantic model. So that's neat, that's actually working together. And one more step I would say is working with the simple view. And I just saw, was it Christian or Christy that had a session last week? So I assume that you already have some knowledge of the temple, but it's the 5th tab over here in Power BI Desktop. And currently it's empty, but a very, very neat trick is, well, often we have on the tables here, and if I just drag and drop, for example, let's say the customer, it will actually give me in Simple, which is the tabular model definition language, the new upgrades. I think it was TMSL before, where we actually have a more human readable interface or code for our semantic model. So that is just for the, was it the customer table here? And you can see in my temple, it's documented right there. So you could also say, okay, I will use Temple more and more, and maybe with Copilot or GitHub Pilot or any AI, or just do it manual. Well, it will propagate down to Power Query or up to the OneLake catalog. So you can have it one place or one document where you actually are maintaining this, which is really cool. And while we are with the Temple view here, I will just delete all this. You can have multiple tabs, or it's called scripts. What I tend to do is I like a backup. I know I was saving on OneDrive. Maybe you have a Git or repo or developing branch or all that, but an extra backup. So what you could do is actually go to the model and you can drag and drop the entire semantic model. Then you have the entire semantic model here in Temple. So you have a backup of your semantic model, so to say. So you could say here, this script 1 is now my Temple on the 2025 August 12th. And then you can have more scripts or something toggle along, or what you ever feel like. So that is something there. We're going to go back to Temple.
I've never seen that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and it's not going to take up much space either because it's just text,
no,
isn't
it's
it?
just text. It's just text. Yeah. And also, if we're going to add something, let me just take from Hello World. It should, if you can see the preview also, is that gonna, yeah, and now you can see like, this is so cool. So now we can actually see what I have adjusted in my semantic models and what was it before. And then you can also, I think you can inline view if that's something more you would like. So really awesome comparison here in Temple. So that question I asked 1 year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, is Power BI Desktop fading away, or should we migrate to everything done in the cloud? But more and more pro developer tools, I would just say with DAX Q Review and Temple, well, it seems like we're going to stay in Power BI Desktop, I would say. All right. So then I have some other things there as well, going into the classic. We need some, you have a live connection, and the report developers would like to have what is actually the DAX behind this measure. So often you would see a script. I think I have it in my slides here. So hovering over there's a very simple script for that in Tabular Editor. For each in model all measures, descriptions equal in your, description should be equal to your expression. Really easy to do. Easy to forget to run this when you have new measures, but quite easy to have this script. But actually, you don't need this at all. You don't need this at all due to the new info.view DAX functions. So what I would suggest instead is that part of every semantic model that I would build is add a calculated table with info.view functions with columns, measures, table, and relationships. I think there are too many informations in those calls. So what I have done is created a small calculated DAX table to the right. I call it model documentation, where I make a union of these columns, measures, tables, and relationships, and just have location, name, type, expression, and description. And then I don't actually need to have that expression to be part of that description field. Then we can actually use the description field for AI or human to actually present something more human-friendly or business-friendly.
Yeah, I liked the description when you hovered over it, but it doesn't update, does it? So when you run the script, it puts the definition as is on that time in it.
Exactly. So you need to rerun the script. Yeah.
If you then have to rerun it. So yeah.
So as this is a DAX calculated table here, it will update each time I add something to the table, column, measures, or whatever. And then I have added this text slicer. So let's say I would like to focus on my measures. And let's say I would like to search for hashtag because I know I have some hex colors I have hard-coded into the measures, for example. I would like to search for that. It could also be other things in all this. So this would be available also for those who are connecting live to the semantic model because it's part of the semantic model. Nice. It will not give you report level measures, but you should see them yourself when you are creating that. So
there's some nice thumbs up as well.
And also, again, with the table, you can see the description field that I added in Power Query on Temple is also here in the table, so in description. So many ways of doing so. I just spoke to a previous client as well just this morning that he wanted to create this more visual, so we could see the relationship like in the diagram view, where you could see the facts and dimensions and something like that. He achieved that using a custom visual. So you could do that as well. So this is updated. This is updated whenever you update the semantic model. So that is pretty cool. So definitely check this script, or just check these info.view here as well. And yeah, that's the script for that. Then there's also, we can have display folders for measures and columns. And often you would see for measures. So I'll just focus a bit on my columns. So I normally tend to have in my semantic model, and I know there are different options, is to have two tables. One, just an empty table with all my global measures, where I, as the owner of the semantic model, create my semantic model measures. But often, because I like self-service, is having a table for report level measures or local measures. For those who are connecting live, can locate the measures on this one. Also, because then it will be sometimes, if you are consistent, a bit easier to know what is actually a global measure and what is a local measures, something like that. And here you can also see I have some examples of my display folders for measures. For example, base, where I have my 4 fact tables. Then I would like to have just the base measure, the sum of that budget or forecast or value. And then I have target, comparison, time intelligence, ratio, then this one I always love, report layout, last refresh, hex colors, dynamic titles, SVGs, active filter footers, all that. So just an example of they can actually have, maybe we have 200 measures here, but having these folders definitely help. But we can actually also do this for columns as well. So let me just open up a raw file here. And I will go inside Tabular Editor 3 now, because I have a license for that. My colleague Daniel Oettinger is the author behind, so we have some good cooperation there. But you could also achieve this with Tabular Editor, the open source. It's called Tabular Editor 2. So this is just opening up. And this is just as an external tool. So we are connected to this one. And in the macro session, I have a lot of macros. I will also happily share all those macros. So many of these things can actually just run the scripts, and then we will have, for example, let's say I have this one with my David model documentation info.view. So here I have a script. It's a C# script where you can run this and you will get that entire model documentation with the tables, columns, relationships, and measures inside your semantic model. You could also copy paste that among your models, but here I have everything here in my macros in Tabular Editor. And in order to save a macro, well, there's a great community, or you could also ask for help with AI, but I have this display folders for measures and columns. I will copy paste this one, and then I will have a new C# script and copy paste this one in. And what is actually looking for, and I'm no expert in C#, but what is looking for dynamically is actually what is the relationships or the keys between these tables. So we can have a key folder for our columns, also whether it's state, whether it's numeric, whether it's a flag or attribute or something like that. And I don't need to have something selected. I can actually just click run the script. Of course, you need to trust it and you know what you're doing, I know. But opening up here in my tables with the dim view, fact view, but let's opening up and see, now we actually have all these folders for the attributes and also key. It's a snowflake dimension, this one, and we have the key. Let's take a fact instead. So here we also have numeric, we have key, we have dates, attributes. So this is done automatically. So whenever I add new columns or add new tables, when I run this script, it will then map these columns into these folders based on this logic as well. So then you would be able to go into your semantic model, and you would actually also be able to see not just for measures, You will then also see for this is not run. Great example. Customer attributes, and I think is view hidden because I have hidden the keys. Yeah, I have my keys there. Yeah, cool.
That is so nice.
So a lot of scripts where you could do this manual. You can always do this manual, but it's painful. And again, if the great beauty of this is, let's say, imagine I have 200 colleagues. Maybe not everyone is doing semantic model development, but it would be a lot easier for our customer care department to help support our customers with our semantic models we have helped build if this is done consistently. Tabular Editor and these scripts definitely help us doing that because we can have it in the same way.
Nice. So, yeah.
But I love folders as well. So folders is not just for measures or columns. Let's open up my organize scripts. And that is actually in Tabular Editor, we have a specific feature that is only for Tabular Editor 3, this one. Everything just before, you could do that with Tabular Editor 2. Now Tabular Editor 3 have this feature of table groups. So imagine that customer I saw where they were having 20 fact table, 100 dimensions. It could be quite nice to have that in your semantic model, not just in Power Query, to have that type of table groups. So here we have some logic, again, from the community or Tabular Editor provided this, going to have some simple checks, whether it's a calculation group, measure group, fact, parameter table, dimensions, or miscellaneous. So I will run this script. And you can see now I have dimensions. I have my fact table and miscellaneous, because maybe there's a snowflake, or maybe there is not relationship from this forecast to my other dimension tables. So each time I update with new tables, anything, I can run the script and I have these table groups. This is only in Tabular Editor 3, so I was thinking, how can I get this into Power BI Desktop? So I have tried to do that. So I have tried to set up some rules. What is a measure group, fact table, dimension, numeric parameter, model documentation, what it's looking for. So this is created in DAX, where we should have this table over here, table group DAX. It's a couple of months old, but it's checking field parameters. For example, if it contains in the info.view table, whether it's contained the name of, which is often only the field parameters. This is using this type of DAX function. And generate is in the numeric parameter, calculation group precedence, something like that. So different checks. So here I can now create a report or part of the landing page or semantic model information. We can actually have this information on the canvas because now it's part of my semantic model. Then we can build visuals with it. So here we have this information here. And again, this is live updated. So if I add a new field parameter, let me just call this measure. Just have a few ones here. And create. And then we should see with instance that there should pop up a field parameter value here in the rows. Yeah, now we have it because now this is part of that table here as well. So this is, again, I do love scripts and I do love something that is updated as we develop, right? So I'm not updating this manual. However, I found that there could be some false positives with this script, so it's not bulletproof. So I dive further in how can we actually achieve it perfectly, maybe. So what I have tried to do is I will open up Timple and I will take the entire semantic model. And then there is, I'm not learning the shortcuts right now, but I think it was bold level 3. So here we have folded, we have quite a few things here. Also just one small thing here. look at this, relationships, we actually have a small information that this was auto-detected relationships, and this was something I did myself, something I've never seen before. But if I open up my product table here, we should have in the bottom of that table and partition, here we have annotations. Annotation is, you could call metadata, and something is already created by Power BI or Microsoft, but for example, what Tabular Editor does when I run this table group scripts, they will actually add an annotation that this is my dimension. And I do trust the script by Tabular Editor. And if you have that available and you would like that part of your semantic model, but there are some false positives, well, this is actually part of your model, but just in annotation. And because it's now in my annotation, I have done something I would say is, I know this is nerdy cool, but, or at least for me, is I have explored DAX query view. And that is also, it's really a nice introduction for this session, because you had Christy with the temple, and a few weeks back or before the summer, you had with the DAX query view there as well. So I have a few DAX queries. So for example, in the table group here it's a different kind of DAX, I would say, when you have here in DAX query. But what we can actually see here is I can utilize this info.tables. And that is because I would like my table name and table ID and my description to be merged together with my annotations table, where I filter my info.annotations, because there's an info.annotations. We have only heard about maybe the 4 info.view, but there's actually 67 info DAX functions. Someone with a bit more years on the back compared to me, maybe I've heard about SQL dynamic DMVs, dynamic management views. So often it's something like this. So I actually selected or set a filter to only look on these Tabular Editor table groups merged together. And now you can see that my annotation values from my script is now part of this table here. So it's there, but it's not part of the semantic model. It's part in DAX query view. So I have now then found another thing that we can actually utilize notebooks in Fabric to run a DAX query and then save that output as a table in a lakehouse in Delta Lake. And then we can import or connect to that table from Power BI Desktop or whatever you're going to use it. But now that's part of the lakehouse. But definitely, just before we go into that, there is a lot of value going into DAX query views, because you can utilize so many more valuable functions for quality assurance. Or it could also be, for example, model summary. I don't think I pronounce it correctly, but I'll try. Haran Ayendran, he is author behind several of these DAX query views. For example, we can then see we have 21 tables, all these columns, measures, relationship. Is it a composite model? Is there a perspective? Is there calculation groups? Could also be model issues, where is there many-to-many relationships? Or do we have a dedicated date table? So several things we actually can check. So what you can actually do, for example, as a consultant, maybe you have all these scripts or checks, a customer asking for help, then you will have these DAX queries to say, okay, what are we actually looking at? And maybe highlight, okay, maybe we should look into some of these things before we go on performance optimizing a measure. We can also utilize that we can have vertipack, memory size, or the relationship. So if you're using DAX Studio or Tabular Editor, that information is also available, but you can actually have this as DAX queries as well to get that vertipack engine information. So quite cool.
That's not quite cool, David. That's very, very cool.
Okay,
because,
thank you.
as a consultant, I've got TE3, but if you're giving your customer the DAX PBIX, they might not have Tabular Editor. I had not thought of using the tabs at the bottom as documentation with the info views.
That is definitely something. And it's terrible that we're not able to multi-select these tabs and then copy paste to another semantic model. But what you can do if you have several tabs is, let me just go further. If you're working with the, maybe it's only visible in PBIR, or maybe it's in the PBIP. I'm actually not certain whether you need the PBIR to do this.
Jake's saying PBIP and then the
okay,
notes
cool,
that you
cool.
can copy
That's a
with
mistype.
PBIP.
Yeah, so then you actually have a folder with DAX queries, and then you can copy paste that as well. I did that myself because I was, yeah, something you could do. So, but it depends whether you're working with the PBIP or not. So
yeah.
So again, you could also, if you're just working with PBIX, convert it to PBIP, then download all my DAX queries and Haran and all your own DAX queries, and then save it and convert it back to PBIX, for example, or just copy paste.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, then to the fun part as well. And I'm not a classic data engineer, not at all. Again, I came from the business side and work more and more backends. So now with Fabric, that really gave me some more tools. And with Semantic Link Labs, thank you, Michael Kowalski, I just got a lot more horsepower to really make a mess. But hopefully someone will then try to say, okay, we can use it for these purposes or whatever. But this requires Fabric, but we can actually do all this in a Python notebook. So not using a PySpark, which would be much more heavy on consumption, starting a Spark cluster and everything there. So let me just try to start the session. So what we can see here is, for example, if you have tried to explore some of these info tables or have a DAX query and try to copy paste that to create a DAX calculated table, maybe you will see this type of error because it's not able to be defined there as a table in DAX or a calculated table. So that then brought me into that we could use the Semantic Link Labs. And I have my workspace name, semantic model name, and a lakehouse name. You could, of course, loop that for multiple models or workspaces. That is for you to do. But here I have just one info.tables. So I'll just run this. And now I will run so we can see a data frame of this small evaluate info.tables. And it's running. Always nice to wait. So now we have a data frame here with 20 columns, 21 rows of that information, just like the result in DAX query view. But again, now we can do this one, labs.save as delta table. And that should just be the data frame I just have here. It could be append if you would like to have some snapshots or have more history or override, and then save it to the lakehouse and workspace. And just like that, we will then have this output part of the lakehouse, and then we can have some documentation or build further. And something is not right. Okay, doesn't matter. It should, but that's sometimes with live demos. So just to be really crazy is sometimes when I've been the Power BI report developer, often I was dependent on, I was not able to write REST APIs. I would like to have all the activity log or audit logs from Power BI or any other APIs or something like that. So I was dependent on a data engineer doing some pipelines, an API, please extract all this data so I can play with it. Again, now with Fabric, we can have something here. So automated DAX query loop. So what do I mean about this? So I said that we had 67 info DAX functions. So I have put it all together here because I would like to have everything I could maybe use, or maybe my AI gonna use. So all this is now part of my data frame, and this will then loop through all these 67 DAX functions, run that on my semantic model, and then save it as in my lakehouse. It'll take 5 minutes to do, so I will not show that. But we have a lot of tables here in my lakehouse. And then you can utilize Power BI Desktop to connect to those, maybe use Power Query, or maybe use SQL to combine some of these. The info.view is really great, but sometimes they're just missing a few columns you could use from other calls, or you could also do it with even best practice analyzer results or your own queries or anything like that. Yeah. So put everything in the lakehouse and see what we can play with it later on. All right. I think that was cool. Maybe we're not completely done on what's okay. We have loads of data. What are we going to use it for? Well, then that's the thing. All right.
Very, very impressive. Johan said, I agree. I'm sort of sat looking at, whoa.
So a few other things when talking about notebooks. Again, using an org app in Fabric, which requires Fabric, well, you can then have notebooks inside your app. And definitely an app is, I would say, the go-to when sharing reports to your end users. Please don't invite them into the workspace. Maybe there are a few use cases, but definitely I would say use an app. Then you can really focus on consuming things. But for more technical purposes, you can actually, well, even we can add, I just added Peter's wonderful session that we did on YouTube. It's recorded, and now we can actually see his session here on the app. And that's wonderful. So we can actually create videos or link to other great community videos inside this app for Academy Learning. Or we just talked before the session here that we are having a nightmare with the drill through or drill mode. The end user's gonna read a documentation about that, or they're gonna watch a 2-minute video about that. So definitely something there. You could also embed PowerPoint, PDF, something like that, even Excel workbooks, or also just links for other places to go. But what I also want to highlight is we can actually utilize these notebooks, and you can schedule those notebooks. So after semantic model refresh or pipeline, you can then update or run this notebook, and then it can be part of this app. This is a very technical on report analysis notebook if it's a PPIR. So you can see the list of pages, you can see the visuals, either using the aquarium custom visual, something like that. But we can actually also, with Sandeep Pavar's help, he created a tool where you can actually have a measure maze dependency, but also a diagram view. So whether you're going to have it in the report canvas or here in the notebook, you can create these here, just having 1-2 lines of code. So this is a measure dependency, but we can also have our entire semantic model. Maybe I would argue the bit of the layout or the user interface, but this is potentially what you need. And they could be automated, this one. So having notebooks as part of the app as documentation, that is definitely also something new to investigate.
And you could have, I mean, you don't have to have Fabric on all the time or a massive premium capacity, couldn't you? You could always have like a little F2 and turn it on to run overnight or something, or when you need it.
Yeah, definitely. So this one also, I think this is a PySpark notebook, but the other one I showed that was a Python. So I'm usually running a F2, and it's, but it's only also me. So, but definitely check something out there. But you could be, All right. So I could go on and on for hours, but I know I don't have that. So what I also did, for example, I was just, instead of having 2,000 lines of code in my JSON theme, I created a Power BI report where I actually extract all this and create let me just show the report. So I also have this, a more raw version of this. I think there are 40 Power Query tables with transformation and different appends based on this JSON file. But this is just a published version here with basically the same information, just how you download it on my GitHub, but how are you defining the colors and icons, visual styles, and something like that. So for example, with the information we can see here, I have these 8 theme colors defined in my JSON. I have defined the KPIs or divergence, so you could use that for your DAX measures. Or you have added your own custom icons as well. It could also be looking on all the different visual styles. And we have 20 or 42 visual styles to define in the theme, but I have only defined 7 of them. So I can then click on, for example, the pivot table, which is the matrix. Wonderful with the name mapping, right? But here we can see the detailed properties. What did I actually set on the detail level for that visual? And then we can maybe, for the more advanced report developer, when we're going to utilize that JSON theme, what is actually changed or what do we need to update? Also, even more important now with the, what's it called, organizational themes that the admin now can set. What do we actually define? Yeah. So I know, very nerdy this stuff, but I think it was a fun exercise. That's also available. All right.
I'm blown away.
I know.
What's for words, David? I don't know. It's very rare that happens, but
I know that we could have a bit more. So yeah, but you'll have the slides as well. But actually, I have not written a word myself. If you would like to have like a handover documentation, look for this resource. Greg Phillips and Alex Badio, they have on their GitHub freely available. You should write it yourself, of course, but they have the content and the framework here for how are you going to document general and scope, or the workflow issues, or the data, or reports, or how you validate, or the deployment. Hundreds of Word document pages there. Look at it and be inspired. Yeah.
They're in the chat, David.
Are they? Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Yeah. Invite them for a session.
Yeah, Alex is giving a session for us. I've already said we can't have too much on documentation. So I think that's an excellent idea to have Alex and Greg on.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely things here. And of course, we cannot avoid Kurt Buehler.
Oh, no.
So what he did as well, there's a Tabular Editor script for that, but it's connected to the semantic model, run 1,500 lines of code in C#, something like that. And then you have this HTML document with the information of your semantic model. And you also have a checklist of the different things. And you have, before you are checking this off, you also have some links on how you should check that off, or notes and comments. So he's just amazing, Kurt Buehler.
Oh, no.
So, but yeah, I think it's only for Tabular Editor 3. All right. So a lot of things, but definitely, I would say more and more. I didn't talk about FUAM, Fabric Unified Admin Monitoring. Everything is coming into the Lakehouse. That's also why I try to strive with these DAX queries and think, put it in the Lakehouse, and then different crazy documenters or developers myself are actually going to utilize this information as well. I'm actually very keen on creating different kind of app experience for the reports based on users, whether it's their first time logging in, seeing the report, or whether it's the 20th time they're viewing the report. I can actually get that information with the audit logs. I could make some conditional checks or row level security, doing sometimes too much, but really, if you really need to have a more like app-like experience, maybe we could utilize that. All right.
Gosh.
I know that was so much. So please write my documentation. Yeah. So you can see there are a lot of things that we have scripts for, and there are a lot of GitHubs out there that are sharing everything, but you need to put something yourself into a system. But if you can do it consistently across multiple developers in your company, gosh, that really is something. And that's really something I strive for to do here today. But it takes some time. So.
And it did. And Anthony said, if you can automate it, because quite often the customer doesn't want to pay for documentation because it's not sexy. But if you can get into the practice of being able to do something like what you've shown, automated, then it can be quicker, can't it? But that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That was fun.
It was fun. It was fun, actually.
Oh, at least for my
documentation.
I've only got a hell of a lot more links now that I've now got to go do some more reading,
Yeah. So look at this. So create resources there.
Oh, gosh.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So I'm just taking all great work and put it into to that small thing I have here on my PowerPoint. So, but definitely check all these resources out. There are some great options for automating things.
Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are like me, are thinking, right, it actually makes you want to do more documentation.
Yes.
It does, though. It really does. I think my big takeaway was the DAX query views, seeing those, because it's then kept with it. And Tanya asked me something on LinkedIn, so I think she's quite happy now that she's jumped in. Any last questions and look at you, David, on time. No yoga emojis coming up.
Fernando's.
No worry, Johan. Yeah, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I really, really enjoyed that. You've made me feel very inadequate, David.
Well, me too as well. I thought, I've got some stuff going, but now I look at this and I go, no, mine's just, I'm like a 2-year-old with what I've done so far.
I know. He's inspiring, isn't he, Johan? Definitely. Very. I love that, David. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us, and all of the scripts, and it's all in your GitHub, isn't it? We can access it. So it's all in the GitHub. I'll publish this to YouTube, because I think we'll all be watching it back. You and Peter have rocked. So next week we have Hani, who is a fairly new speakerish, I think, and she's going to talk to us about UI and UX and how to apply it in Power BI reports. So and then we've got Profit and Loss, Semantic Muscles with Chris Barber. So we've got another great sessions. And Alex and Greg, there's a space for you, because I think we'd all love to hear from you as well. But I mean, that was brilliant, and I think it's doable, isn't it? If you're working in Power BI, then DAX, and you can use DAX to create that with the Fernando. There was a storm in wherever I was. Where was I? Croatia.
Sure, yeah.
There was a storm. The ferry wasn't docking. The whole city was waterlogged. But EasyJet took off on time. And then I got COVID. He's so mean, isn't he?
Oh, but Fernando's got to stir the pot. That's a standard practice. That's his modus operandi. Is let's see how much I can stir the pot here.
Yeah, I know. He is a meanie. But we have now set up, people, a LinkedIn group so that you can all chat amongst yourselves in LinkedIn. Anthony, Jake, and I talked about the best way to do it, and rather than set up a WhatsApp or a Discord or something like that, I think most of us are fairly active, on LinkedIn. So we thought that way we can, we can chat to each other, and it's always useful. And then, so David, again, thank you so much. I'll stop recording now.
It was a pleasure. Just looking at the
there's a
chat.
turn on facilitator. What's turn on facilitator? You seen that in Teams? Turn on facilitator.